Hello and welcome to the Schuman Files. I'm your host, Kelly Agathos, and this file is all about the Brussels blame game. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty Brussels deserves blame for, but this isn't what I'm talking about. Today, we will look at how the European institutions somehow seem to have become a punching bag for so many European leaders. Now, we all know famous politicians that love to take credit for their successes and blame others for their failures.
Well, I think if they win, I should get all the credit, and if they lose, I should not be blamed at all.
But guess what? European politicians also play the blame game.
O l'Europa cambia o non ha più senso.
When you look at the EU now, it makes me think of those badly designed undergarment.
A brüsszeli bürokraták és az európai elitek döntöttek.
To jest podział na tych, którzy chcą, żeby naród polski decydował sam za siebie i na tych, którzy chcą, żeby kilku urzędników w Brukseli decydowało o naszym losie.
Europe is like a giraffe, an animal difficult to define, but easy to recognize.
I don't know what Mark Rutte's problem is with giraffes, but my question is, are these national leaders right to point the finger at the EU? Or are they conveniently playing the victim card? To answer this, let's have a quick little look at this thing we call the European Union. Ooh, maybe a simpler way to understand these complicated institutions is to take inspiration from the Bible. Let's think of the EU like the Holy Trinity. The European Council is the Father, the European Commission is the Son, and the European Parliament is the Holy Ghost, meaning it might be kind of important, but even true believers don't really know what it does. The Commission, the Son, is responsible for executing his Father's commandments and spends his time proposing and implementing laws in Brussels from this building that actually looks like a cross. Now, I don't want to go all Da Vinci Code on you, but how cool is that? No? Just me? Okay, moving on. The Father, the Council, is the one with real power. But what exactly is this almighty European Council? Put simply, it's the institution that calls the shots. Every 3 months or so, the national leaders of Europe go on a field trip to Brussels. They meet in the Council building for what's called a summit, where they negotiate high-stakes laws, or these days it's mostly issues like migration, energy, war, crisis management. These summits frequently go on until the early hours of the morning. And because all these meetings happen strictly behind closed doors, it's anyone's guess what they get up to. When the party's over, they give their marching orders to their ambassadors and the European Commission, and that's how we get most of our laws. So, now that we know that national governments are actually key players in the EU's decision-making process, let's have a look at how they play out this role. What happens on the inside probably looks a little something like this. Sure, we'll sign off on the budget, as long as you give us a juicy discount in return. Or, we'll only agree on the green investment rules if it includes nuclear. Okay, but then we want gas. And some countries, Poland, Hungary, take negotiating to a whole other level. I'll only approve a tax deal if I get my part of the budget. Or, if we don't get EU funds, we will oppose funds for Ukraine. And then they go home and they tell their voters, Brussels is such a power-grabbing bully. Really, guys? How come all these national governments get away with such blatant hypocrisy? To answer this question, I went to Emily O'Reilly, the EU Ombudsman, which is Swedish for person we can complain to when the EU does something we don't like. And she has been actively trying to get the Council to become more transparent for years.
If everything is done in this black box, if everything is done effectively in secret very often, then, we're shut out. And that is not democratic.
Do I really want to know as an EU citizen how the sausage is made?
No, you'd probably die of boredom, actually, if you did know every small detail. What tends to happen is that lobbyists have ways and means of finding out what's going on, so they can impose themselves on the process. But little citizen can't do that. Little citizens wouldn't have a clue how to get close to the Parliament or the Council or the Commission. So they're relying on their own member states to be open, and for the Council itself to be open about what's going on.
Now, you might be thinking, would it change anything if we knew when our leaders were trying to hide their own role in deals by blaming Brussels? Well, let me take you back to 2016. Remember when the Brexit campaign was blaming the EU for labour migrants stealing jobs from the British people? That poster convinced quite a few people to vote a certain way in a certain referendum that totally led to Brexit. But here's the secret. It was the UK government who decided that workers from Eastern Europe could come over without restrictions in the mid-2000s. So knowing does change things. And I think it's high time governments stop blaming Brussels for things they had a say in and demand transparency now. I'm kidding. They're never going to invite us to the party. So I guess maybe we should just fold our hands and pray? Our Father, who art in Brussels, counsel be thy name. On thy meeting days, thy votes explained, and don't just blame the Commission. Give us each day a full report, and tell us all of your trespasses, and we might forgive you when you fuck up. And lead us not into corruption, but deliver us democracy. Or, for the atheist among us, next time your national leader comes back from Brussels with an unpopular law, maybe ask yourself what role they had to play in it.